So good evening, one and all, and thanks for joining for a group discussion or panel discussion with industry bigwigs like Navneet Munot, Pankaj Pandey, and Bharat Shah. This event will be basically anchored by Gaurav Asti, and my name is Manish Mehrotra. I'm the zonal and one of the hosts for you for the evening. I have been with the company for 13 years and in the industry for 30 years, just to introduce myself. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first introduce you to a panel of experts, and then we will hand it over to Gaurav Awasthi, who's the anchor for the event, and he will run the show from there. So I'll start with Bharat Shah. Bharat Shah is Executive Director for ASK. In fact, he doesn't need much introduction, but I thought I'll just cover some of the things which are not known in public domain. So Bharat Bhai is also a rank holder CA. He did in 1985 and 1986 in the same year. He was also the topper from IIM Calcutta. He has been in the industry for 30 years and is known for his value picking and creating a value. He's running one of the biggest PMS of the country, which has the longest track record. So one of the veterans in the industry, and we are very fortunate to have Bharat Bhai helping us deciphering the budget. Thanks, Bharat Bhai. We also have Navneet Munot, who is the MD and CEO of HDFC AMC. Navneet was also previously donning the hat of SBI AMC CIO, and SBI has really moved to places under his able leadership. Navneet also has a fairly large set of experience in the market and is known for his various styles, which could be basically gyrating from value to momentum to strategic picks. Right. The third panel of
I have a statutory declaration. Navneet is one of my very, very dear individuals. So I thought I'll make a statutory declaration.
And I learned a lot from Bharat. So all the difficult things I'll pass on to Bharat, whatever you ask.
Okay. Thanks, Bharat. Thanks, Navneet. We also have Pankaj Pandey, which you all have been seeing on TV regularly. Pankaj is head of our research and has been with us for 2 decades and is one of the known names for his research and quality of research, which he and his team provides consistently. A thorough professional who has in-depth knowledge on most of the sectors, and people who talk to him talk about his intrinsic experience and basically inherent quality which he carries in terms of dissecting the company. Right. So these are the panelists. Gaurav has done his PGM, PG DVM from IIM Lucknow and basically in strategy and finance. Gaurav has worked in various companies like ASK is one of them. Then he has worked in RBS, Citibank, IFL as head of products, and now with us as head of family office. He had also donned the hat of basically heading our products team previously. A very thorough gentleman, known him in the market. So that was a brief introduction. I know all of you are waiting to understand in terms of how to decipher the budget, how to see its impact in the market on various sectors. So who better than to basically listen from the experts? So Gaurav, over to you to take the session forward. And thanks everybody for joining in.
Thank you, Manish, for such a kind introduction, and thank you all the panelists for joining us. It's really a pleasure to host all of you. So, Bharat Bhai, I'll start with you first. So, the finance minister really talked about the Saptarishi in terms of what the budget was really focusing on. So, do you think in these Saptarishis, there is any one Rishi that you wanted to change or you think was missed out that could have been should have been a part of this budget?
Well, we all will have many always thoughts, but and we can always find some particular point. But overall, I thought it was a very, very rock solid effort. The year in which we are entering into election, you didn't see any kind of effect of that on the budget making. It remained solid, reformist with the continuity. No real, all kinds of thoughts were going on before the budget that some tinkering and other will happen. But none of that, very, very solid, reformist, business as usual kind of focus. Second, I'm very delighted at the capital expenditure journey that this government over last few years is really bolstered. And therefore, jacking up the capital expenditure by another 33%, it very clearly shows the mindset that our spend is to get into capital formation mode so that it will be reservoir of future income rather than a spend which is just spent away without creating future value. And I think that's an absolutely exemplary thing to do. Thirdly, the fiscal control part, and I think on that probably we should offer some lesson probably to the Western world as to how to do fiscal management better. We've seen how Europe is dealing with this situation and what America did. First, they trivialized capital by making cost of capital virtually next to nothing. And post that Ukraine war, when they were caught gaping, then they, in an unholy rush, they just wanted to raise the interest rates in a helter-skelter way. That is because they tried to splurge money and throw checks at the people, politically expedient and convenient, and easy to get loyalty of people by throwing checks. But I think India did much, much better by focusing on supply side and ensuring that you carry out reforms. Therefore, rather than Keynesian side demand inflation, which is what the Western world did, which I think was a wrong diagnosis. I think India very rightly focused on Schumpeterian creative destruction economics to make reforms on the supply side. And therefore, we still are at positive interest rate because our inflation is modest relatively, and interest rates are higher than that. While Western world, even after jacking up interest rates, are suffering from negative interest rates, and therefore they have a problem at end still. And the inflation probably is more stubborn there. Therefore, I think we have worked on that path still further. Therefore, guidance for 4.5% fiscal deficit eventually really gladdens that we want to grow, but in a disciplined way, in a way which will keep creating value without creating ruptures. Fourth, I would say I was really pleasantly surprised and very delighted to see that the highest income tax slab being brought down from 42.74 or 84 to 39 was a really pleasant surprise. It probably did not need to be there in the beginning in the first place. And the country which is seeking to grow and build the animal spirit, build the entrepreneurial businesses and great value creation. I think that kind of a taxation set is an odd item with those long-term aspirations. And we still are an economy with $20 to $2,500 per capita income. And therefore, that tax probably did not do full justice to that aspiration. I wasn't sure whether, having introduced it, whether it will be taken back and when, but I was hugely and pleasantly surprised. So great compliments to the budget making exercise and to the FM for the courage to reduce it to 39%. On the other hand, tax simplification, the efforts have continued. They've been liberal on the personal income tax side, where exemption limits have been raised. I think very, very fine and justified step. And I think it will simplify tax rate by eliminating over a period of time the choice between old and the new tax regime. Moving to new regime will make much more simplification. Other than that, the infrastructure, the thrust on building the software capability of the society, all are laudatory efforts. So, all in all, solid continuity, no complication created. In fact, more simplifications brought out. And actually, this unleashes very strong, solid future to look forward to.
Thank you, Bharat bhai. So, Navneet, I'll come to you. So, I'll take some cues from what Bharat bhai answered. That from the past budget to this budget, a lot has changed. We have the Russia-Ukraine war. We have seen massive tightening across the globe that none of us would have envisaged. In this context, do you think that the glide path that we had talked about in the last budget, about 5.9%, and us sustaining there, was that prudent, or was some leeway could have been taken? Because we are possibly looking at a global recession across both US and Europe over the next 2-3 quarters.
Thanks, Gaurav. I think Bharat bhai articulated it extremely well. This government has been very particular about the fiscal prudence. You can go back and see 2018-19, 2019 and 2020, just a year before the election. The government expenditure as a percentage of GDP was the lowest in a decade. Going into an election, the government expenditure as a percentage of GDP was cut because they are so particular about the fiscal prudence and didn't want to do anything which is populist to win the election back. Because I think it's very critical for the longer term macroeconomic stability. It's critical for financial stability. And because Government of India is a very large borrower, it impacts, I think, various other parts of the financial economy, which can have a repercussion on the private sector. So I think that's a very good thing. I'm sure, I think there could be parts of, let's say, a business community which may have liked even a higher expenditure to spur growth. But I think a better way to do it, as Bharat bhai rightly mentioned, is better way to do is improve the quality of the expenditure and not only the size of the expenditure. Or on that, I think full marks on spending 10 lakh crores. And just to put that number in perspective, this number in 2019 was little over 3 lakh crores. That's more than tripled. And you have to add what they have told the state governments, that this 1.38 lakh crores or something, which has been given as interest-free 50-year loan to the state governments, and that has to be spent on capex within the next 1 year. So if you add these two and also the capex done by the PSUs, it's a very sizable sum for the size of our economy. So as a percentage, gone up from like 1.5% to 3.3%, plus the state government and the capex by the PSUs. I think that will really help in reviving the animal spirit. That will really help in promoting the private capex, which all of us have been waiting for. And I think probably it's around the corner, given the improved balance sheet, given the higher capacity utilization, given the other impetus on reforms, etc., and creating the conducive environment by the government. So India's budget has two parts. One is a pure income and expenditure that every other government in the world puts as part of the budget, and second is a blueprint for outlining the overall economic agenda, political, social, cultural agenda. And I think I would say continuity with conviction, continuity on structural reforms, continuity on fiscal prudence, continuity on ease of doing business, continuity on ease of living. All of that, I think that's a continuity on building on whatever has been done in last few years. And the conviction is that when world is going through so many challenges, there is such an uncertain global environment, whether it's geopolitically or what Bharat bhai mentioned about the central bank's balance sheet expansion in last few years and the excesses that has created, or some of the fiscal challenges in different parts of the world. In that environment, talking about how India's economy will take a lead over the next 25 years and not only a higher growth, but a lot more inclusive growth and a lot more sustainable growth. If I haven't really calculated it, and now the artificial intelligence does it like in few minutes. I think the word that was, I think, repeated most number of times, Bharat, Pankaj, would have been like green, right? The word green. And think about it, an economy at $2,000 per capita, talking about sustainable growth, because we believe the whole planet is our family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. No other country in the world history has ever done that. They just destroyed the planet. They never worried about rest of the humanity when they were growing. And India is like thinking about a sustainable growth and thinking about an inclusive growth, I think are definitely a very defining and a very differentiating feature of India's growth over the next several years. I think this the simplification on that on taxation side and putting more money in the pocket of, let's say, middle class to spur consumption as well as to spur investment was also a master stroke. And over a period of time, I think as we simplify our tax structure, as we do a lot more ease of, let's say, filing returns and make it a quite simplified thing, compliance will improve. And along with formalization of the economy and digitalization of the economy, there is tremendous scope for us to increase the tax to GDP in India. India's one of the biggest challenge has been that our tax to GDP ratio has remained very low. I mean, for central government, it's been close to like 10% or so. Over the last few years, started inching up. I think thanks to the GST, thanks to, what I talked about, the tax reforms, improving the simplification and now the new structure. Over a period of time, as that increases, that will give us an opportunity to invest more in physical infrastructure and the social infrastructure. And if the government remains committed that those increased tax revenues will not be squandered away on revenue expenditure or on putting money into unproductive expenditure, and is put to harness the demographic dividend by investing in social infrastructure, healthcare, education, skilling, women empowerment, so on and so forth, and the physical infrastructure that enhances the productive capacity or the growth potential of the economy, and which is very good for the private sector. I think some of those are very, very interesting. I think a special mention of tourism, and I would like to add that from a job creation perspective, while all of us for last several years have been talking about how to get more, how to increase the manufacturing share within the GDP, but a new age manufacturing honestly doesn't need too many people. The scale that we have as the most populous nation and the large number of youth that will enter the workforce is a services sector that will have to absorb the new age population. And there, I think the role of tourism can be quite big. There is tremendous potential in India. And it was very heartening to have that as one of the special focus area for the government. You asked Bharat Bhai about the Saptarishi. Is there anything missed there? So there is nothing miss. I think whatever we think about missing, I think can be put in those one of 7. But I would especially compliment the finance minister for putting financial sector as one of the Saptarishi. I think we underestimate the importance of financial sector for the really harnessing the growth potential of the country. Finance is the lifeblood of the economy. We need to channelize savings into investment. So acknowledging the importance of financial sector for us to achieve our growth potential, to ensure that fruits of growth are distributed to a larger number of people, I think that particularly was really, I would say, very, very heartening for all of us in the financial sector. But I'm sure the message goes loud and clear to everyone that the importance of financial sector cannot be ignored, and it cannot be taken as like a stock market or a financial market only impacts a small set of the population. I think it's a very, very important sector or important segment where the government and regulators and everybody needs to put focus on.
Allow me, Gaurav, if you will, just to add a point or two to what Navneet said, and one more point that I just wanted to add. To Navneet's point on the green energy and generally building a lifestyle which is not a copycat of the Western world and wasteful kind of disposable society that Western world has become to be, but to be intelligently conservative and focused on conservation. That is the kind of thrust government has been talking about. But in 200 years of the record, India has accounted for less than 2% of the total pollution in the world. And preponderant portion of it has come from basically America, Europe, and in last few decades from China. While India is accounted for only 2% of the total pollution in 200 years, and yet the Western world is a temerity to generally advise or lecture world around. Not only that, but doesn't it keeps dragging its feet in providing capital support to make that transition happen. But look at what India has done. Our renewable energy agenda, that 40% of the total energy has to come from renewable energy, was set for 2030. We actually have already achieved that. And the ecosystem of the not just the renewable energy, but green hydrogen. And the railway minister also talked about hydrogen trains and all that. It just shows serious commitment and solid move forward on that. And indeed, India is probably the best chance in the world to build powerful green hydrogen in the green ecosystem. Second point I just wanted to add was what again Navneet referred to in the to the financial sector. If this country has to be rich and it has to move forward to in these Amrit Kaal that we are saying in the next 25 years to be the developed world, the lifeline for that has to flow through the financial markets. Financial markets are not merely providers of liquidity or capital for value creation, but they are the best arbiters of the capital efficiency and directing and channelizing capital in the right direction, even if occasionally it makes mistakes on the way. But it is the financial markets which bring about great degree of solidity. And government has been very clear that they want to unleash energy of the entrepreneurs. No new public sector entities or businesses. Government will be setting the rules of the game as an umpire or a referee, but the game has to be played by the players in the private side. Unlike earlier, when government also happened to be a player in many cases, apart from being a referee. That entrepreneurial energy to be unleashed and that animal spirit to be unleashed will require massive amounts of capital over a period of time. And regard to the financial markets is the only way that can happen. We have seen how in China flagrant disrespect for capital has been displayed in last few years, and what has happened and kind of happening there now. Therefore, even the privatization program of the government, as well as building up that animal spirit and building businesses which will create value and make the country wealthy. I think vibrant, well-run, and well-regarded capital markets is a fundamental source, and therefore it's really delightful to see that focus being there. One last point I thought is a more broader philosophical point. Just think about it, how GST being formulated, how DirectX is being digitized, and efficiency of the system being put in place in just a matter of few years has imparted remarkable tax buoyancy. And therefore, tax collections are happening at a rate much faster than the rate of growth of the economy. That in itself has created space for the government not to rely upon raising more and more and more by way of taxes like we have for decades seen in this country, that all the time efforts at budget is more like raising taxes from the people. Instead, we have loosened the purse. The very fact of ensuring that your laws are straightforward, they bring about compliance, and they ensure that they are fair. That in turn liberates the hands of the government to do the right things. spend money on capex, as well as make life easier for people in the businesses, and reducing the tax burden. Raising income tax in this country at 7 lakh rupee, where you don't pay tax virtually, is a pretty remarkable thing, I would say, in a country where average per capita income is just about 22, 23, $2,400. So to have that 7 lakh exemption limit is truly very praiseworthy, I would say. And philosophically, that government acting in a very fair way to the people is being facilitated by many of these initiatives, GST being one, digitization of taxes being another, and creating that tax buoyancy.
Thanks, Bharat bhai. Thanks, Navneet. So, Pankaj, I'll come to you. You sitting where you are, you actively cover more than 250 companies. So, from your perspective, what were the key takeaways of the budget, especially from the corporate side? Do you think what are the key changes of the sectors that you think really get impacted either positively or negatively?
So Gaurav, if I have to sort of put it, I think one needs to see over a period of time. So one is we have already addressed the issue of high corporate tax. So government has already rationalized that. We've been doing good on the services side part of the economy, because that is one segment of the economy where the logistic issue is really not that big. Now, we all know that the government has been focusing on propping up manufacturing. And I think when you sort of look at the budget and the kind of allocation, what they have done. So to give a data point, in FY18, the overall capex was some 2.6 lakh crores. Now, individually, what you're doing is you're spending 10 lakh crores now, and out of that, 50% of that allocation has gone towards two segments, which is one is roads and the other one is railways. Now, logistics as a cost is very high for our economy. I mean, whether we want to sort of support tourism or whether we want to support manufacturing. So I think the budget is sort of hitting or targeting the right problems which the economy has been perennially facing for a long period of time. So I think, so from that perspective, if logistics as a cost, we are able to sort of bring it down, it has multiplier effect on number of sectors, be it manufacturing, including services, along with tourism. So I think that is a clear factor, which is so logistics is one sector which, according to us, is going to be a beneficiary. And obviously, you'll have banking, you will have cement, you will have steel, infra, and capital goods is another sector which will benefit from this kind of a capex what the government is creating that ecosystem to sort of do. And I think the other thing is that, see, CAD also has been a problem for us for quite some time, and that leads to volatility in currency, and even our interest rates also sort of fluctuate, given the fact that a lot of inflation is sort of imported. I think there are some structural factors what the government is trying to drive. One obviously is, obviously, when you sort of produce more of green hydrogen, or if you're setting up an ecosystem for more of green hydrogen, obviously your import bill sort of come down. And in our import bill, obviously, crude oil is the biggest component. We all know that the government has been sort of tackling the rising mobile imports or the rising electronic item imports. And there will be some custom duty rationalization there. So that is another segment which they've been tackling. I think the third thing which looked very attractive to me in the budget was the gold monetization scheme. So what they're looking to do is that if somebody's converting those physical gold into, say, digital gold, the capital gains will not be applicable. Now, we all know that historically we've been holding tons of reserve, and so that number can be anywhere closer to 25,000 odd tons. And typically we import 700 to 800 kind of tons on a yearly basis, which is costing about 40 billion kind of forex. So I think if you are able to sort of make this scheme work better, the previous scheme did not really sort of do well, but I think probably this was one of the hindrances because of which it did not pick up. So I think, so from that perspective, government has been sort of highlighting or has been sort of focusing on all the kind of problems which will create an ecosystem for us to sort of do exceptionally well over the next say 25, 30 years. So I think so for me, I think those were the structural factors. And obviously, yes, when you're sort of spending more, it has beneficial effect on all the sectors, and with the sectors, some of them which I already highlighted, they might benefit more. But in general, I think what we are clearly seeing is a shift from services part of the economy, because services has been doing well. So that is one engine which has been sort of always delivering for our economy. I think manufacturing is another where the government, through higher focus on logistics, will sort of tackle that. And I think agri is another pain area for us. Luckily, in last 4 years, the monsoon has been good, but somehow farm efficiency is still sort of elusive. So I think if you are looking to promote agri startup there, in terms of improving the farm efficiency, I think that is the another structural pain area for us. So I think government is sort of tackling all the structural pain areas of the economy. And I think while we say that 6-7% is the kind of growth we can normally deliver, if we actually sort of walk the talk in terms of what is the intent of the budget, I think our growth rates are expected to sort of materially improve from here on. So I think budget is sort of dealing all the right problems in a right way. So I think it's a sort of an exceptional budget according to me.
Gaurav, I'll just hit a point to what Pankaj was saying, and I think very correctly pointed out that how a lot of pain areas of the past are being cleaned up so that you create a space for multiplying changes to happen. Till the time pain points are there, therefore whole energy is spent in rectification rather than in force multiplying. We've seen, for example, how the cleanup of the bank and the lender balance sheets have occurred. Also, equally, the balance sheet of the corporates have occurred. With that pain point, which lasted for almost 3 to 4 years, from 18 to almost about 2021, we are now seeing the benefit of it, what it can do, energize financial sector, lenders, what kind of force multiplier it can unleash. Even in agriculture, actually, a lot of good initiatives have been taken over the last few years. One of the most important would have been, unfortunately, stalled agriculture, those 3 reform bills, which would have done a world of good, actually. But if you think about it as an ecosystem, many changes are being made in the agriculture side. It's it's an area with a lot of legacy issues, so it obviously would take time. But the way we are going about solving many of those thorny issues and long-drawn issues is actually creating a space for unleashing force multiplier once each point by point we are reforming, like logistics cost that Pankaj referred to, unleashes the power of the manufacturing and industry or tourism. Many of these are significant deep down legacy issues, and the government needs to be hugely complimented to have courage to take up all the thorny issues and one by one kind of keep attacking them without relenting the energy.
Thanks, Pankaj. Thanks, Bharat bhai. So, Navneet, I'll come to you. What I really wanted to know, there are 2 parts of the question. First is that last year the budget was really complimented that the fiscal maths is very credible. For this budget also, would you say the same thing, that the fiscal maths is very credible? And the second question is that all of you have really talked about the fact that the infrastructure spend has really gone up 3 to 4 times over the last few years. In practice, where do you see that, what has been the efficiency of the spend, and how has it really improved productivity, when we have moved from 2.5 lakh crores kind of budget allocation to about 10 lakh crores today? So in the real world, what is the kind of impact that it is making, and how are you really seeing it?
So the first question on whether the budget math is credible, I think it's credible. And it's not only about the credibility of the numbers, but also about the transparency. I think we're not trying to, put things below the line. I mean, something which should be above the line, trying to put that below the line to show a particular number or a particular, fiscal deficit to GDP, so on and so forth. I think numbers are quite credible, both on the revenue side as well as on the expenditure side. And over the last several years, I think the government has shown its commitment, as I said, on the fiscal prudence, and I think they will stick by it, barring, I mean, any global and uncertainty that hits us, like let's say when the budget would have got presented in February 20, nobody would have assumed that there is going to be an economic recession caused by such a massive pandemic. That's a different thing altogether. But otherwise, I think ceteris paribus, I think as of now, the numbers are credible. On the second question on the effectiveness, I think both Bharat and Pankaj have alluded to that and articulated very well. I mean, Pankaj mentioned about, the high cost of, high logistics cost in the economy. And if we really want us to take advantage from China plus one, if we want really to make the most of PLI, we want to make the most of like creating another big manufacturing, create that opportunity in India, it's important that we work on few things. One is like we need to bring down the logistics cost, bring down the power cost, bring down the cost of capital, and then ease of doing business for manufacturing to go up. And on the other side, I think the labor market, where I think you get the efficient and productive labor, which is well skilled for the job. And I think it looks like systematically we are working on that. And as Pankaj mentioned, that a large part of that infrastructure spending is on roads and railways, or particularly on the logistics side. As that comes down, as the efficiency in the economy improves, I think it tremendously helps, and it has the manufacturing sector or the other parts of the economy, and has a multiplier effect. You go back to 98, 99 to let's say 2003, and I think the economic survey also mentioned about it, that our investments in telecom, in electricity, electricity and the road infrastructure had a huge multiplier positive effect from 2003 to let's say 2007, when economy did well. And I think anytime we invest in infrastructure like that, it has a huge multiplier effect over a longer run.
Actually, Gaurav, if you think of it, out of the four factor markets that we typically talk about in classical economics, I would say technology probably, which is not defined in economics as the fifth factor, but technology I would think is really a fifth factor in the classical economics context. But out of the four factor markets, we have done remarkable work on the capital side. By unleashing entrepreneurship and by government vacating the commercial turf and encouraging the businesses, we are also releasing entrepreneurial factor element also to the liberation. Two factor markets where still work needs to be done, land and labor, both being difficult, so to say, political issues. Land actually was attempted way back in 8 or 9 years back, but that could not happen at that point of time. I hope that happens at some stage, because unshackling both of labor and land markets will be critical to fully unleash our capability. I honestly believe, in terms of already what we have done, economy is actually ready today to be able to deliver 8 to 9% kind of growth on a sustained basis, not on a one-off basis. We may not reach all that way immediately, because of the fact that the rest of the world is in difficulty. And if the whole of the rest of the world is largely in challenge for some length of time, our ability to export and create that additional growth and levers would take some more time. But so in the near term, probably we may grow at less than our full potential. But I think we have to recognize that our full potential today as an economy, as a system, now stands elevated to a much better level than what used to exist in the past. Earlier, structurally, we simply did not have strength to be able to grow beyond 5 to 6%. And if we started doing something higher than that, we created immediately ruptures somewhere or the other, because structurally we were not geared to deliver that. Today, I think structurally we have delivered many important areas from where they were condemned earlier. And therefore, we have created a capacity for the economy to grow at a much better rate. And therefore, I believe, I'm sure a lot of economists may dispute, and I am no economist, but I believe structurally today our country is in a position to grow at 8 to 9% on a sustainable basis. Once the rest of the world is in a more conducive situation, relatively speaking, situation gets a bit more amenable. I think this country is ready probably to take the baton ahead of compared to any other country.
Thank you, Navneet and Bharat Bhai. So, Pankaj, I'll come to you. We have been talking about a K-shaped recovery over the last couple of years, where the rural part of the economy possibly has not done so well, and the uh, middle class, upper middle class seems to be doing well. So, with these kind of rate cuts, do you think the moving ahead, the growth will be more broader? Is that, and if yes, then which are the sectors that you think are most likely to benefit?
I think, see, rural economy has been sort of struggling, but I think when I sort of look at it from the budget perspective, there also I see a lot of structural positives. One is when you sort of when you're looking to sort of create cooperatives which are going to be sort of digitally linked. I think the price discovery is going to be a lot more better. I mean, when we sort of look at milk as a agri commodity, I think the realization or the to farmer is quite high at about 60-65%. So, for example, if I'm buying milk at say 40 rupees a liter, 60 or 70% is what is realized by the farmer. But you cannot say the same thing, say for a crop like potato or some other. So I think if you're creating a cooperating society which is working on the entire ecosystem in terms of providing better seeds to providing so better way of or improving the overall agricultural efficiency, I think then it benefits the entire segment of discretionary consumption. I mean, it could be a low ticket FMCG consumption. It could benefit even the two-wheelers. It could, I think tractors already have been sort of doing well largely because it's very difficult to find cattle, so from that perspective, we are already seeing some bit of a mechanization. So I think if you are able to improve this overall efficiency, I think the kind of production what we do on the agri side for vegetables, for a lot of this thing, I think the benefits to the larger society is immense, and that will have again a big ramification in terms of the overall consumption. What can happen? Our per capita is only about 2 lakh. Ideally, if a rural sort of does well, I think it will have a lot more positive ramification in terms of the entire because that is a bigger chunk of a population which is really sort of consuming only basic stuff and not really sort of upgrading that much. So I think budget is clearly sort of looking to address. It's a difficult and a political and a sort of a lot of issues are there. But I think government is making that effort in terms of through cooperatives to sort of improve the entire economic or the value chain, especially on the agricultural side. And like I said, I mean, if economy does well, everything does well by different magnitude. But I think so. I look at budget from a more of a structural perspective than individual sectors or stocks.
Thanks, Pankaj. I've always known you as an optimist across different cycles. So, Navneet, I'll come back to maybe something like flows. So there have been some changes, and earlier in the show, just before we started, we were also talking about the fact that the new tax regime may people may start referring it. So India has historically been a country where a lot of savings have been tax related, like ELSS and insurance also. At least for the HNI community, there have been some changes. So do you think this will impact flows? Because last 1 year, 1.5 years, it's been DIs which have been really holding the fort against FIs.
So as an industry, we may have liked to have continuation of that ATC benefit. The ALSS as a product could have, uh, garnered more amount of money from households. But over a period of time, we have to look beyond that. And I think the households' equity allocation is still abysmally low. I think if you take the entire household balance sheet, 4.8% is equity allocation, which has to grow substantially over the next several years. So one is that savings within the economy grows, and within the savings, a larger proportion comes to the financial investments, and within that, a larger proportion comes to the equity. I mean, that's a very, very structural trend. Flows have slowed down in last few months. In fact, the heartening feature is the SIP flows, and I think it remains very, very robust, which is like kind of a structural part of the flow. People want to invest in a very disciplined manner for the long term. But the cyclical part of the flows, I mean, the lump sum flows have slowed down very considerably for a variety of reasons. I mean, they could be, let's say, maybe the 1 year returns not being positive, maybe higher interest rates, maybe some bit of impact of the inflation, so on and so forth. But over a period of time, I remain positive on the flows. But in the near term, we have to watch, I think, the market environment as well as, the interest rates and some of the other factors.
Sure. And thanks, Navneet. So, Bharat bhai, we have been hearing you now for decades now. So, I remember you always used to talk about the J curve coming up, once the per capita income reaches about 2,200, 2,000 to 2,500 kind of range per capita. So we are, we have reached that level. So the question is rather that, do you see that impending J curve? And, if yes, then, which parts of the economy will really benefit?
No, Jacob and technical descriptions are loved by economists. My argument is simple. I think when you reach a certain level of threshold income and kind of provide an enabling environment to the people where they feel that government is not out to reach into their pockets and take money away, but to really make it efficient and easy for them with reasonable taxes and all that. We are entering that virtuous cycle. There are a number of major changes that we have done. Some of them have already taken deep roots and effect. Some others are in the process of making that impact. Some reforms are still work in progress in terms of actual impact to be caused. And I assume there are still some more reforms left on the table, like I alluded to the labor and the two-factor markets of labor and land, principally. I believe the ecosystem of the reforms we have created is now deep, and therefore the growth becomes not a chance or a happenstance, but actually a predictable outcome. And which is why I earlier was alluding that our base structural growth rate is now shifted up, in my opinion. And therefore, the whole digitization efforts, the whole usage and embracing of technology, which is making the country a lower cost economy and more efficient one. Significant efforts at the fiscal discipline and prudence, reining in of inflation structurally, bringing the cost of capital down, unleashing entrepreneurial spirit, startup ecosystem. 5G, I think, as a data source is not merely a piece of technology. 5G fundamentally will allow us to leapfrog into the next level of entrepreneurial energy efficiency of the businesses. And therefore, more than the individuals, it is at enterprise level, 5G will have a deep impact over a period of time. And who better than this country, where data is abundant, one of the cheapest. And I believe what Mukesh Bhai at the time of the launch of 5G mentioned, that ours will be the most, that India's 5G rollout will be the most efficient one. and will be probably the fastest one in the world. And I indeed believe that that will be the case. The speed with which it will be rolled out will have deep structural benefit. Manufacturing ecosystem that we have kickstarted with PLI related benefit and more are in offering. Alertly and adroitly grabbing opportunities in the space which is being created by China by its own behavior. And, transparency itself, in my opinion, transparency is not merely a social good, it's an economic good also. Therefore, the way the transparency, whether through RERA in the real estate or insolvency bankruptcy process in the business failures, or GST for formalizing businesses, or digitizing your taxes, both direct and indirect taxes, and therefore greater transparency there. All these makes the money into the system, into circulation, and therefore it is not only velocity, but it also is capital efficiency thereafter. Money which is lying under the pillow is no capital efficiency because it is no velocity, it's a dead object. And therefore, transparency itself is one of the important economic goods for making the growth virtuous and self-sustainable one. A large amount of socio-economic benefits running into trillions of rupees every year are now through DBT route directly into the hands of the people. And therefore, all of that money is in the system and moving efficiently forward. So I think when you take into account all of these and the way we have created a very powerful public goods, digital public good ecosystem, and government is at the forefront, whether UPI or CoWIN or now ONDC or account aggregator idea, many of these digital public good initiatives are very powerful, unique in the world, and original technology developed by this country. I think, therefore, lot of base and foundational elements are in place now for an assault to be fully be launched. Only when things were just exactly looking like that, the Ukraine and Russia conflict is going on, supply chain disruption, hydrocarbon price inflation, and then these China COVID related issues. Many of these things have not fully taken benefit of where we stand today. Therefore, maybe for a while, we may be at 7%, 8% kind of a growth rate, 6.5%, 8% type. But I genuinely believe we are ready at 8 to 9%. And by that time, probably some more deeper reforms would have happened, which will further improve the character of our growth, if not the quantum. So I believe we are at a cusp of a great defining moment. We are at a cusp of a huge favorable change in our favor. So like Victor Hugo says, there comes a time in man's life. I think this is the time in this country's destiny. Therefore, the growth rate will not only be superior, but it will be more predictable, more solid, more sustainable for a long period of time, relatively simpler to understand, and therefore greater confidence on it to happen. Because unless you have a belief about long-term growth, investments either in businesses or in markets don't happen easily. I think creating that base gives the growth rate that longevity, much desired longevity, which itself is a source of attracting capital, making it at a reasonable rate, and creating wealth and value for the businesses and investors. And in turn, creating an ecosystem for moderate cost of capital to remain in the system so that we can truly have a large capital formation riding on it.
Thanks, Bharat bhai. So we are now, I think, running out of time, and just take a couple of questions before we wind up. So one question that I have, and any of you are free to really pick it up, is that are we doing enough for job creation and really to support the demographic dividend that we have, or are we too slow and we will lose the demographic dividend?
I'll quickly answer, and maybe others will add. But no, these issues will take some time, and Navneet alluded to it, that tourism is a very powerful employment driver, apart from uplifting the income levels. Manufacturing is important and vital because it's a strategic capability of the country, which we can't surrender and outsource the way America has chosen to do to its detriment. And therefore, manufacturing of all kinds is very vital for the entire ecosystem in the country. It may relatively create less jobs, but it will create a powerful income driver, and both are important. We need greater income of the society, and we need more people to be occupied gainfully. So these initiatives, issues take a bit of time. We are in the right direction. We are doing the right things. In PLI also, some of the schemes are focused on more employment intensive areas like textiles and others. So we have to build bit by bit by bit, but we are in a right direction. Given the nature of the issue, it will take more time than one may like to see, but in terms of the course, we are in a right direction, is my opinion.
So probably if I question that is coming. Yeah. Please.
Continue, Gaurav.
No, Pankaj, please continue.
I just wanted to add was, see, population as such, people see it as a problem, but I think an educated population is an asset, and which is what I think the government is looking to create. I mean, if you're looking to sort of imbibe all the future technologies in terms of reskilling people, I think so. I don't think we are going to sort of lose the demographic dividend which we have compared to other competing geographies. That's a very limited point which I wanted to add.
Also, when we say the educated population, I think we underestimate the power of digital technology. But in a world where you don't really, I mean, maybe in some time you won't really have to go through the formal education the way we have gone through. I think look at what the Chat GPT can do and what a 5G enabled, I think a smartphone can do, which is getting cheaper and cheaper, and what it can do. So I think we are going to transform from one of the more illiterate society to the most literate and capable society, because we'll be so digitally enabled, and our ability to, whether it's delivering the last mile service, whether in terms of educating or enlightening people, will be of a different order altogether, as we have transformed from the most data poor to the most data rich society in the world.
And just to supplement that point, we are so naturally inclined towards technology and digital adoption. One glorious exception to that is relatively techno-illiterate like me. But in general, our society is so very smart in adapting technology. Government itself, if we see, government has been superior technology adapter and proponent than even private, and private is now catching up on that. Therefore, it's quite remarkable. Even a man on the street, whether he's selling vegetables or fruits, or a rickshaw driver, he is able to use technology so seamlessly and efficiently to further his economic interests. And therefore, it is not an elitist adoption, it is mass-based. And that, I think, stands to our strength. For a variety of reasons, probably we look down upon ourselves as a society, as people, as capability, as economy. I think moment you turn that a little bit and see the real picture, instead of being very diffident, you start realizing that you have to be appropriately more confident. And I think one of the biggest things that has happened is appropriate confidence imparting to the capability, character of this country, and finding its true destiny under the sun.
So we'll just quickly take a couple more questions. So one question is that do you think we will move completely on the new tax regime gradually? Is the government in the process of phasing out?
Over a period of time, I think it's simplified, and large number of people will get attracted to it. If you look at the younger generation, I think if you ask for more than 2 clicks, I think they just lose interest. I think something which is a lot more simpler rather than complicated will be very, very appealing to the newer generation. So over a period of time, yeah, it will be a lot more simplified structure. Yeah.
So the next question is that even countries like Bangladesh have marched ahead and got their per capita income ahead of us, and really focus on sectors like textile. So do you think we have now finally got our act together?
I think we love self-flogging ourselves, and sometimes economists and media really join the party in self-flagellating ourselves. Comparing Bangladesh and comparing India, I think is an ultra dig. Bangladesh does well. We should be happy. We should be delighted because, like Navneet mentioned, Vasudev Kutumbakam, every global citizenry excels and grows and benefits. We should be delighted and happy about it. But I think comparing India and its strength and position and the size and where Bangladesh really sometimes I think I feel that we as a society probably love to castigate ourselves nicely.
Then Manish, is there something that you really want to add? I really had a very, very interesting session with dealing with all the three triumvirans of the industry in each of their specific fields.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. Bharat bhai, there are some questions on my chat. One is in terms of this guy saying in the first phase of China Plus One, we could not benefit the way Bangladesh and some other economies benefit. What is your view on the second phase, especially on things like smartphones, things like medical equipments, and some other industries like API, which he's saying we have the advantage. So what is this budget going to do than that, and how will the impact?
I completely concur with that viewpoint. In the first phase, textiles and others may have gone to Bangladesh and some of the others. Europe, in particular, a concessional treaty with some of these places, and therefore they benefited also. Our policies lagged what we needed to do to achieve it at that time. So all that I think is a work in progress now. But as the gentleman has correctly articulated, on the mobile phone, for example, 4 years back, we were importing on a monthly basis 8 to 10,000 crores of mobile phones. Last month, Apple alone in December exported $1 billion of Apple phones from the country. Just one brand, Apple. From more than a billion point 3, billion point 4 at that time in terms of imports a month, we have come a long way. Consumer durables is not a such chain. I mean, at one point of time, air conditioners in this country, air conditioners were simply imported. They were unpacked and put into the showrooms and being sold. And today that simply doesn't happen. These issues, we are moving in exactly the right direction. But anything good and great does have its own time. Life is about compounding, and these changes grow upon us when we give it a reasonable time. In terms of policy, we are in a right direction. In terms of the intent of the government, we are in a phenomenally in that direction. which wants to build the wealth and the prosperity of the country and its people, and enabling the businesses in ease of doing. Therefore, mobile phones or consumer durables or chemicals or API, various areas will fall into the place one by one over a period of time. It is not a question of this or that. And like I think Pankaj earlier correctly articulated, when the economy will grow well and will do well in general in a symbiotic way, uh, more than individual incentivizing and targeting. Of course, in some areas you will need it, like we are doing it right now. But once we reach a kind of a critical threshold, it will be the growth of the system in a symbiotic way, which will be the critical driver, rather than looking for this point and that point in this sector or that sector. And which is what very adroitly Pankaj articulated.
Sorry,
Thanks,
Manish and
sir.
Gaurav, I have to leave because I have another call which has already started and I'm little late for that. So
No,
I'll bid
thank you so
goodbye.
much, Navneet.
Thank you so much.
Uh,
Thank you.
Bharat bhai, this is slightly off the budget purview, but one client wants to ask, what is your view on US? Is it recession or stagflation?
I don't know. I'm not an economist, and I suspect even economists don't always or reasonably efficiently know such answers. Though they do try to put it out all the time in the public domain. But I remain a bit skeptical whether these issues economists also really predict well. But I would say this thing. Uh, America has created a lot of structural weaknesses and negativity for itself. Two, three prime examples, if I can give. The way they surrendered their manufacturing prowess, starting from 70s or 80s, and became a country of outsourcer, really, where it can't actually manufacture anything meaningfully, barring some technology related manufacturing. And even that too in a limited way. It surrendered itself and it allowed its manufacturing prowess and capability to be hollowed out. Secondly, the fact of the matter is America is the most significant economy of the world. And the American dollar remains universal currency, whether you like it or not. But I think America has been abusing both its status as a universal currency as well as its ability to attract free flow of capital from all over the world at low cost without needing to keep any reserves for itself. That is a great advantage to have, but over a period of time, I think America has become complacent and it has been abusing both of these sources. It has been abusing its status as a prima donna on the capital side. It has been abusing its status of currency also, not just in a almost callous way, but I think it is bordering on kind of a negligence, I suspect, at times over a period of time. But these issues probably take time before they haunt you. It's very hard to predict when these scenes come back to give you trouble. So America is accumulating its troubles and it's building up kind of a reservoir of future problems for itself. When it will hurt itself, when it will come to afflict it is difficult for me to say. But what it is doing is not exactly right. And that said, I must say America still remains an innovative society, a adaptable society. In technology side, for example, America remains still at the forefront and easily among the most cutting edge technology creators. This particular capability and relatively bit more entrepreneurial society compared to say Europe should state America in good state, especially its adaptability, dealing with the problems there and there and solving them rather than letting them fester, and a kind of a go-getting attitude of the society in general. These aspects are positive for America, and therefore, in balance, despite its many scenes and many, so to say, worse that America has accumulated and created over time, on balance, I'll still say America will remain on a compounding growth stage over a length of time. Unless if the areas of strength are damaged, then America would have a huge amount of difficulty and challenge. Some amount of it you are beginning to see that with the way America itself was a creator and troublemaker in terms of first abusing the cost of capital and bringing it next to nothing by disrespecting capital, and then during pandemic, washing system with the liquidity way march, it further abused the capital. Instead of paying the price for it when inflation surged, and instead of suffering, dollar appreciated, and part of the inflation has been sought to be transferred to the rest of the world. But this kind of abuses can't go on forever, and therefore some amount of changes we are beginning to see. Some geographical block related transacting, in India's case, rupee trade methods being established. At some stage, digital currency should come in help. Many of these issues at some stage will create a counterpoint to these. America's status as a universal creditor, universal debtor of the world, as well as a universal currency holder. If it was used in a positive way, it would have continued to stand well for America. But I think at some stage, I think they will have to pay for it. And I hope in a right way, cookie does crumble for them, because ultimately this kind of abuses must be met with some cost to be paid by them.
Sure. Thank you, Bharat. Gaurav, over to you back.
So, I think we have completely run out of time. So, Bharat Bhai, thank you so much for your time. Pankaj, thank you so much for your time. I am sure it was very, very knowledgeable session for all the participants, who are really listening in.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Gaurav.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Pankaj.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.